CropLife International looks after, well, keeps these agrochemical and other biotech companies in check. He makes sure that they comply with their professional responsibilities, corporate social responsibility, and generally guides the industry. So, you know, you're not working for any one company, but something of a watchdog and a mentor for those companies on how they deal with the development, promotion and support to the technologies that they put on farms, large and small. So, you know, Andy's got a lot of experience of the small farm sector, and that is important to industry, and it's important that small farms do receive, you know, the technology and the support that that private sector can give. It's there, but it's not nearly as well put together as it should be, and it's not nearly as well integrated. But I'm going to leave Andy to explain that. So this is a real singing and dancing presentation. I mean, we have all sorts here. You know, we have difficulty switching the machine on sometimes. It's got speakers and videos and goodness knows what. But guaranteed that Wi-Fi will drop.
Yes.
And you'll be left on your own. So anyway, without any more ado, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank
and
you.
if you get to step out of line, you shout.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Terry.
there we go.
And I should say I am a little bit nervous about the Wi-Fi. I don't generally do a presentation with an internet connection. I think I was put off some years ago by seeing a German consultant giving a presentation in Dar es Salaam. And we were into about slide number 5, and suddenly a Skype message propped up saying, "Good morning, sexy." I'm actually more relieved my wife was going to come here this morning, so if that message had come up and she'd been sat here, it could have made for a very interesting presentation. So, as Terry says, I've got a background working on DFID-funded programs, crop protection, and then sort of taking that forward through the Research into Use program, which Francis and I and a number of others worked together on. And one of the things that struck me during that Research into Use program was we've been operating in a public sector arena, talking about sustainability. How can we get sustainability? A 3-year project. For us, sustainability tended to be getting a government to adopt a manual or to agree to take a process forward. But under Research into Use, we were allowed a bit more freedom, and we were sort of interacting with the private sector. And I became more alert. I mean, one of the slides I took out of here was in East Africa, in Kenya, as part of Research into Use. We set up a small franchise selling fish farm inputs to fish farmers. The government had built ponds in every constituency, but there was no provision of the inputs that the farmers would need. I actually bumped into somebody, this was 2011 we did this. We set up 6 franchisees selling these inputs. I bumped into somebody from the Ministry of Fisheries just a couple of years ago in Nairobi. I said, "Well, do you remember the aqua shops? Whatever happened with them?" She said, "What do you mean, what happened? What's happening?" Those 6 franchisees have become 56 franchises that are selling inputs to farmers. I was blown away. 5 years after the funding had stopped, the project hadn't collapsed. It had actually grown and grown because of that private sector link. So a couple of years ago, when I saw an advertisement for an opportunity to work in the private sector with CropLife International, I felt if I was really true to my feeling I wanted to get Research into Use, and if I was genuine about the private sector having a role to play, it was time to step over and see what I could do within that sector. So that's where I'm speaking from today. And as Terry says, CropLife International is the members organization for the crop protection, plant biology, research and development companies. So I'm still in a comfortable place for myself because I can talk research so much. As a result of mergers, these are the current members, and I operate in the non-competitive space. So I don't do any favors for any of these individual companies. What I'm looking to do is to promote general principles. For example, integrated pest management, responsible use, resistance management, and an interesting one which I was pushing Terry that we should have a talk on sometime. It's called container management. Clearing up those pesticide containers, seed bags, after they've been used to help to reduce the plastic pollution issue. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'll be around at lunchtime. So, the Crop Protection Network. CropLife International, we're based in Brussels, we have a global outlook. We have a hierarchy with national associations, as you see here in the darker color green, 91 associations across the globe, and these are grouped together into regions so that the regions can can help to address issues of common interest. Not just talk about the technologies in terms of crop protection, but also in terms of delivering these technologies to the farmers. I've still got that into use ethic in my head. How can we make sure farmers growing in tropical environments are able to benefit from the technologies? And then also to talk a little bit about future generations. How can we make sure that we maintain or increase dynamism, bringing in the youth, bringing in new ideas into agriculture? So, I'm sorry, I think for everybody in this room this will be a lot of repetition, but we have just stepped in off a busy London street. So let's take ourselves to the more global world, the global issues that are happening out there. And for the next few decades, we are going to have to deal with increasing populations, more mouths to be fed, and mouths that need to be fed in an adequate manner. How are we going to do this? Within the context as well that we're more and more aware of the damage that we're doing to the environment. Can we continue the increases in agricultural land that we've seen over the last few decades? I would say no. We had a really good presentation, was it last year, Ralph, talking about vertical farming. That's one way forward. What can we do to increase the productivity and reduce waste from the land that we're currently farming so we don't have to encroach into the beautiful nature and ecologies that are out there? Also, agriculture is critical in developing country economies. How can we further strengthen that rather than just ignore it? And I feel we need to be like pulling all of these factors in. Also, additional changes that are taking place. We need to be thinking about how we are with resources. Where are we in terms of water availability, oil availability, nutrients? Changes in what's quite a dynamic system. Those of us working in crop protection are very aware of how climate change can provide new environments for pests when maybe their natural enemies haven't developed yet. How are we going to continue to be alert to these and deal with these pests? So, talking about technical developments, when I first started to put these slides together, I was thinking, well, people might ask me, how is this different to the Green Revolution? There, the idea was to bring in new technologies to really boost farmers in the South. And I don't really want to open up that debate. What I want to do is to present some of the evolutions that are taking place in terms of crop protection, but then also some of the new technologies that are coming in, and to think about some of the applications of these, but not to get into the greater debate. I think that's a discussion that we can have afterwards over lunch or at another time about if these technologies would actually have positive or negative social impacts on the whole. So in the introduction, a few of us talked about the old DFID crop protection program. that program had an annual budget of about £5.5 million. We operated about 60 projects at any one time, and we felt that we were really helping to progress knowledge on crop protection in developing countries. I'm now working in a sector in which those 6 member companies have a $2.6 billion annual spend on research. When I first came across that, I was thinking, wow, my goodness, all those days I was working in the public sector, and we were pretty much focused on what other public sector researchers were doing, and we weren't tapping into the research of the private sector. Now I feel, look, can we get this out there more in partnership so that more farmers in the South can be benefiting from this? So what is this research investment going in to fund? Well, sorry, this isn't very clear, but this is a graph of the number of introductions of new active ingredients. Not the formulations, just the active ingredients. With blue being herbicides, brown color here being insecticides, the gray being fungicides, and the orange being others. And you see this is 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2000s and 10s. Although there has been a drop-off more recently, there is still new active ingredients coming into the market to benefit different farmers and different crops. Now, the common perception of the crop protection industry is this is all chemicals, all chemical pesticides that are coming out. And this graph here is charting the number of new chemistries with the orange line against biological crop protection products, natural enemies, in the blue charts. And you'll see that in the even in the early noughties, there were years where there were more biological control agents licensed for use and released than there were chemistries. The industry is changing. Those 6 companies there are no longer just producing chemistries. There's a significant biological element to it as well. And even within the chemistries, again, the technology has moved forward so significantly. Some farmers are applying 95% less active ingredient than that farm was receiving in the 1950s. The industry does not want farmers soaking their fields with active ingredient. There is so much concern. It's wonderful. I'm working with people that are so supportive of farmers. I feel as though I'm in a similar environment as to when I was working in agricultural development projects. People really committed to the promotion of IPM, responsible use, resistance management, and bringing down the amount of pesticide that's being applied. And again, talking about the nature of the pesticides that are being used these days or being released these days, there's the classification system for pesticides on hazard from 1 to 3. But a third of all active ingredients aren't even on that scale. They are now classified as U because, as we see here, they're unlikely to produce an acute hazard. And no new active ingredients are being released that are in class 1 pesticides. So when we talk about pesticides, it's almost as if pesticides is too generic a word. When we're talking about it these days, we're talking about a lot less hazardous pesticides than we had in the past. Now, I work at CropLife International. I'm the Stewardship Director. I'm not the expert who's developing all of these new technologies. I've put 7 up here, and I've actually got 7 short film clips but I think we've probably just got time for a couple. I'll quickly run through the technologies that we have up here. I've got a short leaflet at the front, which people are free to take away afterwards, which has got a few sentences on each one. But I'll briefly describe, and maybe if we just focus on active ingredients and RNAi as films, if there are others that people would particularly like to see, then we can show them. So I'll skip the description of those. Biologicals, as we talked about before, that's been a big area, not just development, but how to mass produce them. Computer chemistry. How can we use computers to faster identify potential pesticides, but also to use artificial intelligence to analyze the potential impact of those active ingredients on human health, on the environment, wider. So these tests that used to take years, we can now be working on through computers and really help to specify our research. Work is also taking place by member companies on inoculants. Now, people might think inoculants, for example, developing rhizobia that can help plants to become more fertile, and therefore, as a result, be more resistant to pest attack and to be more competitive against weeds. Formulations, sorry, I should have mentioned this before. Of course, the formulation of the pesticide, it's not just the active ingredient, but also the formulation allows, a better formulation will allow the pesticide to be used in a more effective manner. And then also seed treatment on there. Seed treatment, protecting the crop, but also opening up other opportunities on the cultivation side. The other area, great to have the technologies, but what about their delivery to the farmers, to the people that can benefit? I've worked hard with our member companies this year to actually compile the number of farmers that they are training in just 1 year. I've got the data from 2018. I know it's a year behind, but it's been a struggle this year. And they have trained, the member companies together with CropLife associations, 20 million farmers worldwide in 1 year. Now again, when I was working in agricultural development projects, that number would just be dreamland. And now I'm sitting back and thinking, okay, that 20 million, how can we take that forward? How can we improve that? How can we make that training more effective? Actually, if you think about it, if you use the FAO stat to 570 million farmers worldwide, 20 million over, let's say, 10 years, because the CropLife member companies will be there. They are committed to continue this training. We're talking about serious numbers of farmers there. How can we link it in? What can we add to that training to really help to push agricultural development? As I mentioned before, 91 national associations. I wanted to pull out that this isn't just CropLife member companies working themselves. I'm really trying to push them more into partnerships. We've got partnerships there already with international donors, with FAO we were talking about earlier, with the CGIAR, with there are other links with other NGOs as well. But how can we be sort of more targeted, make sure that we are working with relevant partners to help to support farmers in that way, but also to put ourselves out there so that NGOs know all of this good work is taking place within the industry and that there's a willingness to partner and to work together. And the flower was picked on purpose to illustrate that, and everlasting. That's what the private sector is offering. It's not just there for the duration of a project. Within CropLife International, we're no longer doing projects like CSR projects because I want agricultural development to be integrated across everything that we're doing. So, for example, I'm very keen on the effectiveness of our training. In the Africa region, we're focused not so much on training every individual farmer, but training what we refer to as spray service providers. Now these are so people within the community that are trusted. We go for males because we wouldn't want a pregnant woman to be spraying pesticide. They are operating as a business. It's their business to help to protect the crops of the farmers in their area. They will be paid by the farmers that they're servicing. They will conduct activities such as pest identification, pest scouting, identification of pest thresholds. They will buy pesticide from reputable sources. Now this is important because, as we all know, there can be counterfeit products out there, non-genuine products, which if applied to the farm could lead to a number of problems or might have no effect at all. The spray service providers as well have all of their, make sure that, the spray service providers are provided with the correct protective equipment and then trained in its use. And then finally, at the end, the spray service providers are responsible for the empty pesticide containers, ensuring that they are triple rinsed to get rid of virtually all of the residue, and then bringing them back to a collection point, bringing them into a national system if possible, or at least breaking them open and making sure they're disposed of responsibly. I'm also trying to work with the salespeople of our member companies, thinking about this, the correct protective equipment. In India, we've been working with our associations there so that the salespeople don't just have pesticide sales targets, they also have sales targets for personal protective equipment, for gloves, for goggles, for masks, so that those salespeople, it's actually financially advantageous for them to be promoting the safety equipment that will go along with the pesticides. What's also happening in terms of crop protection delivery? I've brought a couple of slides up here about drones. John, I didn't realize that you were going to be here. There are people in the room with more knowledge than me. But I see drones as an incredibly exciting opportunity for crop protection in the tropics. We know the problems there. The spray service provider, they can be spraying for 10 or 15 farmers. But a drone has got a potentially a wider area that it could be conducting crop protection services for. The drone can be conducting remote sensing, so identifying where there are pest problems, be it pathogens, insects, or weeds, can be targeted in its spray area. It also means that there is a separation. We're no longer looking at a poor farmer walking along with a knapsack sprayer on their back. The drone is separated. We should be targeting, working with these drone operators to make sure they're putting best practice in.